Hey folks, welcome to another VR video. Today is the last video in my GDC wrap-up series. It was really cool to revisit what happened last week at GDC this week, and I got a lot of positive feedback and a lot of good comments, so thank you so much for your feedback and for continuing to stay tuned. I really appreciate it. Today, we're going to talk about games, but first a little bit about me. I own a HTC Vive Pre, an Oculus Rift with touch controllers, an HP Windows Mixed Reality headset, a PlayStation VR, both the 2016 and 2017 versions of the Daydream View, a Google Cardboard, and a Nolo VR. I did a review of VR and AR headsets and a review of different accessories and other associated VR hardware so far in the series. So if you haven't watched any of these videos and this is the first one you've picked up, please go back and watch the other two as well. I have a lot of cool information from things that I got to see at GDC, and I'd love to share it with you. So up first, we have a game called Starbear Taxi. Now this one is by Funktronic Labs. Now they're the people that made the game Cosmic Trip, which was a kind of RTS style tower defense game that came out fairly early on for the HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. Now Starbear Taxi is a game that only uses one controller. It was the Oculus Touch, and you could either use the right hand or the left hand, if I remember correctly. I used the right hand because I am right-handed. But it was just tilting the controller to move the little spaceship around. It felt like a cross between Crazy Taxi and the Jetsons, with the little Jetsons car. I was not very good at it. The person that I filmed here for this off-screen footage was basically a pro at this game. But it was pretty fun, and the thing that I found was interesting was after talking to the developers, what they were trying to do was make a game that could be very easily adapted to each of the VR systems that are out there. So yes, this was designed and built on an Oculus Rift, but the Oculus Go, Google Daydream, this nice controller, sorry I keep using that in all the videos, but it's right next to me, and that's reality right now for mobile systems. All of those different systems will work with a tilt control. So they made this game in a way that it can very easily be ported across all systems. From a fun factor, you know, it wasn't the greatest game I played, but it kind of felt like one of those carnival games where you kind of test your skill at staying still, but just lightly nuanced tilting. And again, it felt a bit like Crazy Taxi, and Crazy Taxi was one of my favorite Dreamcast games. Up next, we've got Dr.Splorchy presents Space Heroes. Now, Dr.Splorchy presents Space Heroes is a new game by Squanch Games. This is the same team that made Accounting and Accounting Plus for the PC VR world and the PS VR world, respectfully. Dr.Splorchy presents Space Heroes is going to be a Daydream exclusive. Now, this particular one was the same type of humor that you would expect from Squanch Games. I don't want to go too much into detail on the demo, but there was death, there was carnage, there was mayhem, and I'm really looking forward to playing this in full. I did get to play this on the Lenovo Mirage Solo, which is a Daydream headset that has World Sense. And the thing that was kind of disappointing is you only kind of tilted your head left and right. I would love to be able to kind of lean forward, lean back, peer in, move around. Hopefully in the full game, if you have a Mirage Solo, you'll be able to do that. But honestly, at this point, I just really want to have this game on a standard Daydream view. I think it's going to be a great demo title, and it's got that same humor, that same fun factor as Accounting and Accounting Plus had. Up next was Evasion by Archiac Games. Evasion was the first title that I've ever played on a Vive Pro. I had actually been talking to the developers on Twitter for the past few weeks, and they said, we're going to have this demo at the Intel booth. Come check it out. Make sure it's one of your first titles on Vive Pro. So I made sure that that was the case. They have 4 different classes that you can play as. I played as an engineer, which had kind of this mechanic where you could grab items with like this whipping mechanic and just break and destroy things similar to what you're seeing in the video right now. I really, really, really loved this game. This was a fun shooter, but it was also a kind of like an arcade feel type game where you can go in and just wreck things. It was awesome. And when I talked to the developers, they are considering having it be a multiplayer game with kind of a squad. So maybe up to 2 to 4 players. With 4 players, you can have someone that can kind of go in and be like the healer, and each of the people can have their own special skill set. So you can have one of each of the different classes. I'm going to probably mess this up, but I think there's a striker, a warden, an engineer, and oh man, see, I knew I was going to mess that up. But there are 4 different classes in Evasion. It is a ton of fun, probably the most polished first-person shooter style game with all these cool particle effects and explosions and destructive environments. Check it out when it comes out this fall. I'm definitely planning to myself. Next was Vacation Simulator by Alchemy Labs. Now, Vacation Simulator is a game that is kind of a sequel. It's the next game in the series, I'd say, after Job Simulator. And it kind of starts off like that as well, where they welcome you to a vacation resort. Vacation Island, it's called. And then the corporate guy comes and gets in your face and tries to ruin your fun. It was definitely along the same vein of Job Simulator. I got to build sandcastles and have it be judged, where you pulled a little string and had the robot judge me. Took some selfies, went swimming, played some netball. Lots of cool stuff. It was absolutely... Well, it was a very accurate simulation of vacation from the folks that, I guess, accurately simulated jobs. I'm not really sure. It was fun, though, and I definitely am looking forward to checking out more. Again, it was a bite-sized demo, so I can't really say it's the best game, it's so awesome. It was like 10 minutes, which is very similar when Job Simulator was first being showcased. It was a series of 5 or 10 minute demos as well. But I definitely want to check out more from Vacation Simulator in the future as well. The next game I checked out was Seismic Games Blade Runner Revelations. Now this one was also on the Daydream Lenovo Mirage Solo platform. And really, this trailer actually shows a lot more gameplay than what I got to experience. I basically walked down a back alley and looked for a couple of clues. I was a police officer and just was starting out an investigation in this alleyway. It was kind of immersive, but it was probably the least VR style game that I played while I was there, and I was kind of disappointed because they had some really cool effects inside the room. They had kind of like a Chinese lantern, and they kind of had the set dressing inside the room where we were doing the demo, and then the gameplay just kind of fell flat. Again, you could turn your head back and forth, but you can do that with a regular Daydream View headset as well, and I didn't really feel that sense of world sense that should really be used to sell the Lenovo Mirage Solo platform. Overall, I'd probably pass once this comes out, unless it's a free title, to be perfectly honest. I will definitely check out Dr.Splorchy, which was the other title I played on Daydream, but again, I hope that comes to just the normal Daydream platform. They Suspect Nothing by Coatsink was another great title I got to check out, this one on the Oculus Go. Now, in They Suspect Nothing, you are a human, I hope. I think I was a human. I'm not necessarily sure because I kind of felt like a robot by the end. Anyway, as a human, you're trying to pose as a robot and get through all of these different tests that screen out humans. That you don't want to cause any type of panic amongst this robot society. So you go through a series of tests. The first one I went through, I had to go through an interrogation procedure. Then I was in a junkyard and had to go through a series of little mini games to prove my aptitude as a robot. It was a ton of fun, as are pretty much all of CodeSync's other VR titles. And I really liked the voice acting, the polish in the game. It was just... It was a perfect, seated, you don't need to lean forward, lean back, no positional tracked game. And it's strange how well that works on either Gear VR or Oculus Go now. A lot of people discount mobile VR, but games like They Suspect Nothing really add to that plate and make it so that it's a worthwhile device and worthwhile platform to explore. Up next was Anshar Online by Osway Games. Now this one was also on the Oculus Go, and I've played a couple of other Anshar games from Osway Games. Way back when the Gear VR first launched, there was an Anshar Wars title, which was basically just a spacecraft where you blasted other spacecraft and spun around in 360-degree rotation to attack the enemy. It was waves of ships coming at you. You destroy the ships, move on to the next wave. That somehow got discontinued, I guess. It just kind of disappeared off of the Gear VR store. It was replaced by Anshar 2, which is also available on the Oculus Rift, and somewhere on my channel you can watch some gameplay of. But Anshar 2 was along the same vein. You were a spaceship in space. This one had some voice acting and a storyline to follow, but that was pretty much it. Anshar Online offers 50 levels of content and online multiplayer, and it's cross-platform across Rift, Gear VR, and Oculus Go. And maybe when Santa Cruz comes out, it'll also be cross-platform there. I can't guarantee that because they haven't really announced any titles for that platform. I liked Anshar Online, but the setup for the demo that I was in didn't really give you a lot of room to rotate. It was kind of like a bar top setting, and it was a little bit uncomfortable to do the 360 rotation. Standing or on a swivel chair at home, probably an awesome game, especially online when you're playing with other players. It felt a lot like Eve Valkyrie when Eve Valkyrie first came out, where you were in a cockpit, but this time with the spaceship in front of you. Up next was Apex Construct. So Apex Construct I own on PSVR, but they actually had this really cool prototype at the ARM booth. Fast Travel Games worked to build a mobile prototype on the Gear VR. It wasn't the whole game, it was just a couple of rooms, but what they did is they actually used a Samsung S9 stock, the camera on the back of the S9 for positional tracking using Google AR Core in combination with the Gear VR software. And they did just use the Gear VR controller, which again is very similar to a Daydream controller, but with a little trigger on the front of it. So instead of having a bow and arrow where you can pull back like you can in the real game, in the prototype, you had a gun. But otherwise, it was very, very, very well done and very much like the true console game. I have not played the PC VR version yet, so I can't really say, oh yeah, it was just as good as PC. But it was very well done and felt almost the same as the PlayStation VR version. So that just was really a good demonstration of what you can get in a mobile platform using just the off-the-shelf phone. I'm hoping that using AR Core, developers can build more prototypes like this and eventually refine it into actual games where you don't need an external sensor outside of the back of your phone to track. That would be outstanding. This was just, again, a short, brief prototype, but it worked really well and was really, really cool. Up next, I checked out another kind of VR prototype. This was Project Wingman by RBD2. It was showcasing the Truesky software, which added the sky literally to this game. I have been playing the alpha version of Project Wingman. It is not a VR title, at least not at this point. But playing this game, I know that Ace Combat 7 is coming out with a... I don't know if it's an actual full VR game or if it's just a VR experience that's tied with that game. But this game is very, very similar and very realistic as far as like feeling in the air. I had rain splattering all over the cockpit. I had different types of cloud cover, so as you flew into the storm, the clouds got darker and darker. Plus you've got the enemy coming at you in planes and in ground-based forces. It was a really, really good simulation of air combat, and I definitely recommend checking out the alpha. It's on itch.io right now for free, or based on a recommendation of whatever you feel like demo or paying for the demo, and then eventually it's going to work into a full release. But even without VR, it's a ton of fun. With VR, it just added so much to it, and it was so immersive with that rain and with the different cloud cover. So the true sky was really shining in the Project Wingman demo. Next game I checked out was Traffic Cop VR. Traffic Cop is not just a traffic direction simulation. There's a bunch of bonus round mini games that can also come up randomly in your gameplay. You do direct traffic. You take traffic from one lane and direct it to go to the other lane that it's intending to go to. Sometimes they're turning, sometimes they're going straight. All of it is in VR. It was a fun game. I don't know that I give it more than 10 or 15 minutes of my time, especially the fact that, you know, after the traffic direction piece that you're seeing right now on the screen, when you get into the bonus rounds are things like, hey, it's a wave shooter. Not really a fan of wave shooters at this point in VR. But there's also stuff like this one where you're throwing trash at the cars, kind of recycling. So depending on which mini games you get, there is a bit of variety. Not the best graphics on earth, not super cutting edge, but it's a slightly different mechanic. You're directing things to go from one lane to the other. It's probably a fairly accurate simulation of being a traffic cop. Next, I checked out Firmament in the Indie Mega Booth. Now, this one is by Cyan, the people that created Myst, and also the previous VR adapted Abduction. Firmament is their first ground-up VR title, and what I got to play was really just a very early preview release. So I ended up starting out in this ice block. Somehow that ice block was defrosted, and I found myself wandering along the side of a mountainside with a form of companion. It felt a lot like the very early Vive title Thunderbird: The Legend Begins for some of the scenes. The puzzles were fairly simple. It being a demo, that's totally understandable. You want to get people through the demo as quickly as possible. But having kind of a helper companion was... It kind of felt like one of those games where you have to get two characters to each area at the same time. And it felt an awful lot like Myst, which is great. I would absolutely love to have a full Myst game in VR, and I think Firmament is going to be as close to that as we're going to get at this point. It's a really cool title. As you can see, you know, it's great graphics, great visually. The soundtrack was very good. It felt like it was very cinematic. And I'm hoping that when this title actually releases that there's a lot more to it than what I played, and that it isn't really reminiscent of other things. I want it to kind of be its own distinct thing. It's not really at that level right now, which was kind of disappointing to me, but I'm hoping it gets there soon. Again, I can't really judge it based on the preview. other than say that I'm excited to see what becomes of it. Up next was 26 Rob Plays. 26 Rob Plays is a game that is a ton of mini games, 26 of them in all, that you basically play as party game. It is very, very reminiscent of WarioWare. It reminded me a bit of games like Loco Dojo and the Incredible VR Game Show, which are both currently available on Vive, and I think both are also available on Oculus Home as well. I'm not sure that Incredible VR Game Show actually currently works with Oculus Touch, but stay tuned, it probably will in the future. I'm digressing. 26 Rob Plays has some really fun mini games. The one that I had the most fun with was one where you had to scoop ice cream into an ice cream cone and stack up the scoops of ice cream. But they had a ton of different things, stacking blocks on top of each other to try to make the tallest tower. It felt like things that I would do in a work retreat team building event, which was kind of funny. But it was definitely something that I can see as a pass and play title, which we don't have too many of yet in VR, where you take the headset, do a short activity, take the headset off, pass it to the next player. I think this is going to be one of those titles, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm not sure when it's releasing. The last I saw was either April or May, so stay tuned. Hopefully it'll show up on Steam and Oculus Home soon. Up next was Sunwalker. Now, Sunwalker is from a studio called Hack and Paint. Hack and Paint are actually all working remotely, which impressed me. I don't know how I got on the subject of that, but the studio is actually a bunch of people working remotely together to build the assets and then build the levels. It's a story that is pretty rich in content where global warming has impacted the world. You want to try to stay out of the sun as much as possible. And it is a third-person game where you play controlling this character and trying to keep her in the shadows and rebuild the world. Eventually, you get to the point where in the demo it stops, but you've met a companion character. I'm not sure what happens with that companion character. But it felt an awful lot like games like Kin, which I absolutely love on both Gear VR and Oculus Rift. And games like Hero Bound, classic platformers, like Metroid, things of that nature. It was a really fun game, and I love the visual style of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing Sunwalker develop and hopefully become a full-fledged title in the near future. Up next were two games from Survios. The first was Electronauts. Electronauts is a music creation game. I have no rhythm. I am not ashamed to admit that. I am not a musician in any way, shape, or form. And they were like, oh, don't worry about it. You'll still make something really fun. And I went in, and the instruments are fun to pick up. Obviously, they're virtual. But one of the instruments that actually is changeable is just a series of spheres in front of you. And you can just use your Vive wands or touch controllers as mallets. And I was making these cool steel drum sounds and kind of making beats as I was going, and I could add bass and I could add drum parts and I could add different synthesizers and things of that nature through it. And in the end, it was actually, it felt like I made a song out of it. There are actual tracks with much more professional style to them than the one that I demoed, but I had a ton of fun with it. I don't think it's something that's going to be a practical music creation title where you're going to be able to build your own concert. I do think, though, that it's going to be a fun music toy. Again, kind of in a party atmosphere where you can have somebody to be a guest DJ, similar to something like DJ Hero or Rock Band or Guitar Hero in the past, but with less points stressed and more just making that sound and creating. The other game that Survios had me actually stepping into a boxing ring and fighting as Adonis Creed from the movie series Creed, which is a sequel to Rocky and Rocky Balboa series. I was trained by virtual Sylvester Stallone, and I knocked out my opponent in 1 minute and 27 seconds. So that's a challenge, I guess, to those of you out there that when you pick up this game in the first round, try to knock out your opponent. If you can do so in 1 minute and 27 seconds or less, then you accomplish something. Anyway, Creed is a lot of fun. I've played a couple of boxing titles and a couple of titles where you do boxing in VR, and I feel like Creed is a very accurate representation of how you would actually box, but also add some arcade-style mechanics. Like if you get knocked down, you have to run back into your body from your out-of-body experience. And it uses a very similar mechanic to Sprint Vector, Survios' previous title. So what I can say is that both of these new titles from Survios, you can see that they're taking what they previously developed in Raw Data and Sprint Vector, incorporating pieces of that and components of that into their new titles, but still coming up with something that's new and innovative. I felt like they used that MGM license for Creed in a way that was good and slightly innovative. They could have just called it Survios Boxing, and it probably would have been just as fun. But having that movie-based having the movie-based characters, and also I'm assuming having a movie-based storyline, is going to add more exposure and more sales to this title that's definitely deserving of it. I also played a couple of awesome 2D games. The first was What the Golf. I filmed some footage of someone playing the Super Putt level, so I do want to share that a little bit. Now, What the Golf is a game basically for those who don't really understand or don't really care for the sport of golf. It's campy, it's fun. Sometimes you're aiming a ball, sometimes you're aiming a house. Sometimes the golfer is actually what goes toward the hole, not the ball. I really like the unique style. Tri-Band has made, I think, 26 or 36 holes, I guess, not just levels. And some of them pay tribute to classic games. So there's some Portal levels, there's some Super Hot levels. And it was just something very different in the Day of the Devs Lounge. And there was another game in the Day of the Devs Lounge that was also quite different. House brought Untitled Goose game, in which you play a goose. And they give you a list of tasks that you can complete. Like right now, this person's actually trying to build a picnic by taking a sandwich and a picnic basket and an apple and things of that nature and dropping it on a picnic blanket. But really what Untitled Goose Game devolves into is Goose trolling a gardener. Now, the gardener is just going about his business in his garden. You can walk up to him and honk at him. You can steal stuff from the garden. You can throw stuff in the pond. You can take his hat. You can make the hose go off and sprinkle him with water. There's a ton that you can do in this game as this goose. And the goose is waddling around, flapping its wings in a very goose-like fashion. The graphics are not super spectacular, but the motion and the circumstances made it a ton of fun. And the last thing I want to talk about was something that's not really game related at all. It was Google Maps. And it was the thing that I thought was the most amazing thing that I saw at GDC. Google Maps has opened up their APIs to select mobile developers. Unfortunately, this isn't available to everyone just yet. But their API now has Unity 3D integration. And the demo scene that they gave us, you could create a fantasy land with dragons and knights. You could create a candy land with rainbows and gumdrops. You could create a steampunk village. You could create a futurescape with these little QR codes floating above the buildings. But my favorite part was hitting the I'm feeling lucky button, just like you can on Google search, and using that I'm feeling lucky button, creating a world that had a mishmash of all of that. This particular API set is going to be used in numerous games coming that are going to be location-based titles similar to Pokemon Go and Ingress in the future. There's a Walking Dead title. There's a Jurassic Park title. I believe there's a Ghostbusters title. There's going to be a ton of these games coming in the years ahead. I've been alpha testing one of those titles called Ready that's by Google's Area 120. And I have to say that 3D buildingscape, you can do just about anything with it. I can certainly see things like Grand Theft Auto Global and things of that nature coming in the future. And I'm super excited for what people come up with. I just want to play this video one last time because, again, you're just using the standard Google Maps platform and then just applying whatever world you want to build on top of it. And that was just really awesome to see in person. And I'm really excited to see, again, what developers bring to the table for this platform. And I'm hoping that someday this becomes something that's more open to other developers. Right now they're shutting it down to just specific partners. But in the future, who knows who or what you can make just by using Google Maps as a base. So I hope you enjoyed this series. I had a ton of fun at GDC just exploring and then reminiscing this week and informing. I also bumped into my friend Caleb, who's at Reality Check VR, and you can find him and his channel at thefaceofvr.com. I did a quick segment with him, and he filmed a lot of content at GDC as well, so check out his channel for more content. And check out mine for other content in the future. And, go back and look at some of my older videos. Some of them were pretty fun, too. But, again, I really appreciate the response I've gotten to this series. And I hope to do more content like this in the future. I'm going to try to do at least one review-style video per week or per couple weeks in the future. I've been fairly busy with the day job. But this stuff is what I live for, is VR and AR stuff. So until next time, get out there and enjoy some VR for yourself. And thanks for watching.